this video we're going to look at how we can get input from the user from text boxes within the game. To do this I'm going to carry on from the button video where we simply created a main menu screen. We had a go to game button. When you clicked play game it says wow that was fun, and we can go back to the main menu, etc. So we're going to create a new window which will allow them to enter the player's name. So, I like to use the word create, don't I? Create enter name window. Okay. Yes, we still want to clear the background. We'll set the colour to be blue for something a bit different. We'll set the font size to be 50, why not? We'll say enter name below. And do we need any buttons in here? We'll need something to go back to the menu, so maybe I'll keep the menu button. And rather than controls.add button, why don't we do controls dot in here. We're going to set this as a text box. So I'm going to say txt, just as a note to myself that it's a text box. This is just a variable name, text. I'll call it player1 name equals controls dot add text box. You can have a multi-line text box if you wish. I don't think there are many situations where you'll want it in most programs. So we can get we just give it the left coordinate and the top coordinate, i.e. the x coordinate and y coordinate. So we'll just say 0. Oh no, we won't draw it at the bottom. Let's draw it underneath where we drew the text and about the same location. So let's say at 400 and let's say 300. Okay, so let's just go and see what that looks like on the game. Of course, actually we've got no way of getting to the enter name. So on our create main menu section, we need another button. So as well as a button start game, we'll have a button enter names. So that's just our button that allows you to go to the enter name screen. And when you will create a add button, we'll create that at slightly lower down. So that one's created at 300, that one's at 500, so we'll create this one at 400. And now we've got an enter names. Let's just change the caption of that button then. Enter names. So now we've got a go to game button, an enter names, and a quit button. We haven't told it what we want to do when we enter the names. So we need to have another else if. Else if clicked button is but enter names, then we will go to the enter names screen. So create enter names screen. Okay. So our enter name window should now give us that box. So let's just go and test to see if that works. So we load up to our main menu, it should have 3 buttons now. Yep, go to game, enter names and quit. So if I go to enter names, enter name below, we've got a little box to enter our name in. Just say Tom, which works fine. Nothing actually happens. And if I go back, the box is just empty, and nothing actually happens with our creating this box. We don't do anything with that value. So what I think we should start doing is storing the user's initial name. So when we do our initial setup sub, which is here, I'm just going to have a new variable called p1 name, and we're going to store the player's one name to start with as null or player. Let's just call him player, shall we? Player. Sounds a little bit gangster. Well done, player. Anyway, so we'll go and see if we can give them a chance to change their name. So we could say something and by creating a new event. So we can say controls dot, and we want to get an event when text is typed, and you can see this raises an event when text is typed into any text box control. So when the user types something in, we'll run the text typed sub, which we haven't created yet. So the text type sub will be in here. Oh, we need to create it with the word sub, of course, first. Sub text typed. And when they do type text, we need to check to see if it's the box that we created. Now, we called our box, if we scroll down, text player one name, and the txt I used just as a way to denote that was the actual text box. So text player one name, we'll need to use that, and we need to check to see which the last one which was the last box that was typed into. So controls.last, so rather than the last clicked button we can say last typed text box, and we'll store that as last typed box. So we're just storing whatever the user, whichever the box was that they last typed in, we'll store that into a variable. And we can say if the last types box, oh, I've got types instead of typed. So if the last box that was typed in is equal to text p1 name, which was the box that we created, the text box, then we'll set player one name, which we set up already, equal to the contents of the box. So we say controls dot, and we can get the button caption, we don't need that, the text box text, yeah, whatever's in the text box. Controls dot get whatever's in the text box. We just tell it the text box name that we want to get that from, and well, it's this one, text box for the player one name. So let's refer back through actually what this does, because it's not simple. We've got the controls.text typed. So anytime text is typed, we run this sub, and it will just do this. And all this sub does is it says, right, whatever the last button typed in, whatever the last text box that was typed in, we'll just store the name of that text box. Now we've only created one at the moment, and we called it text player one name. And we did that when we created it in our enter name menu. So here's us creating that text box. So if that was the last one that we typed in, then we'll set the player one's name to whatever the value of the text box now is. Brilliant. The only thing is we now don't actually ever see what the player one's name is being stored as. So what I'm also going to do is just print that to the text window, just so you can see how it's being stored. So text window dot write line again, and we will say that we want to write whatever player one name is. There we go. So let's go and run our game. So we could go to the game, go back to the main menu, we can go and enter our names. We've now got our text box. Now as soon as I start typing in here, so let's say my name is Tom, I typed T. So what it's done is it said, right, because you typed something, it ran this sub and it said, right, because the last box typed in was this one, player one now name equals whatever you typed in. And because I've only typed a T so far, it stores whatever's currently typed in. So when I type another letter, it now overwrites what is stored as player one's name, and again it's printed it to the text window. So it's actually every time I type a letter it's updating what player one's name is. What's the beauty of that? Well, it's a little bit of processing that it's having to restore it every time I type a letter, and you know, if I'd said, oh, I spelled Thomas wrong, and I went back, you can see how it's, oh, spelled that wrong, is correcting and restoring every time I type. The benefit of it is that I don't need to click store or anything like that. It's been stored as we do it, and that's still stored. If I go back to enter names, you notice it's currently blank, and and when I go to type again, you notice it re-types over. So what we could do is we could set what's in the text box to be what player 1's name is currently. So for example, when we go to create the text window, we create the controls, this text box, and we can say controls dot set text box text, which is setting the whatever's stored in that text box at the moment, and we'll just set it equal to whatever player 1's name is currently. So this line of code will just simply, when we create the text box, whatever P1 name is at the moment, we'll put into that text box as a starting point. Cannot find properties controls dot set text box text. How bizarre. Let's just try that one more time. It's because I've not done it correctly. Set text box text should have referred to this. We set the text box name and the text we want it to be. So the text box name we want to enter into, which must go into brackets, is text player 1 name, and what we'd like to type in there is whatever the player 1's name is. Let's try that one more time. So we set it the first player's name to be just player in the first instance. Oops. So if we go and check out the set player's name screen, you notice that it's automatically stored as player to start with. And if I go in and change that to be fish, it updates as so. And when I leave and go back in, you notice it's already got fish stored because we've updated the player 1 name to be fish. I think that's quite a nice way of entering text. You could of course do it differently, and rather than store the text every time using this event, every time text is typed, you could just say if this button is pressed, then store whatever the text box value is into this variable, so effectively doing that line of code.